My wife's people judge a man by the size of his hands. I have small hands, soft ones. They break a little when I try to open a heavy supply crate, the kind that her younger sister can lift with one arm while barely paying attention. For 3 years of marriage, Vexthara Kaur of the Drevian Ascendancy never let me forget this. She did not say it to hurt me. She said it because, in her mind, it was simply true. The same way the sky is blue, or water is wet. "You are fragile," she told me once, early in our marriage, while I struggled with a container of medical supplies. Where I come from, a man who cannot carry his own weight in stone is not given a name worth remembering. I did not carry stone. I carried something else. I carried contracts, careful words, long nights of planning that kept a shaky alliance between our two peoples from falling apart. That kind of strength does not show when you flex your arm. It shows only when everything depends on it, and by then, it is often too late for anyone to notice. Still, I loved her, and in her own way, she loved me too. She married me partly because our two worlds needed each other, and partly, I think, because she found me interesting, the way you might find a strange animal interesting. She was proud of her strength. She was proud of her people's history of battle and survival, and she looked at me, a soft man from a soft world, and could not understand what I was supposed to be good for. I let most of it go. I told myself that love does not need to be equal in every way. I told myself that being underestimated was not the worst thing in the universe. Most days I believed it. Then came the day everything changed. It happened on a quiet outer colony called Meridian, a small settlement built on a rocky, wind-blown planet, far from the center of Ascendancy space. I worked there as a human liaison, helping to manage trade and communication between our people and the locals. It was steady work, peaceful work, the kind of job that let me use my mind instead of my muscles, which suited me fine. Vex was away that week, 3 systems over, helping settle a border dispute between 2 proud warrior clans. She left me in charge of our small home and our daily routines, half joking that I would probably forget to eat if she was gone too long. I promised her I would be fine. I did not know, of course, what was coming. The attack began just after sunrise, though sunrise on Meridian was more gray than gold, filtered through thick orange clouds. I remember standing at the window with a cup of warm drink in my hand, watching the light change, when the alarms began to scream across the colony. At first, I thought it was a drill. We had drills sometimes, boring ones, meant to keep everyone sharp. But then I saw the streaks of fire falling from the sky, and I understood this was no drill at all. Raiders had come. Not soldiers from a rival government, but hired fighters, the kind who worked for whoever paid them the most, and who did not care much for mercy or rules. They wanted the colony's power core, a valuable piece of technology that could be sold for a great deal on the black market. To get it, they were willing to remove anyone standing in their way. Our garrison was small. Most of Meridian's defenders were away on patrol duty, leaving behind a handful of soldiers, a group of frightened colonists, and me. When the captain in charge of the outpost was struck down early in the fighting, along with several senior officers, there was nobody left with more experience or higher rank than me. I was, on paper, the closest thing to a commander that Meridian had left. I remember the young communications officer looking at me, her eyes wide with fear, her voice shaking as she asked, "What do we do now, Mr. Vale?" I looked at her. I looked at the smoke rising over the eastern wall, and in that moment, I thought of every time my wife had called me weak, every time she had looked at my hands and found them lacking. I thought, maybe this is not the kind of strength she understands, but it is still strength. And today, it is the only kind we have. We hold the colony, I told her, though my heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. And we do it smart, not just hard. I will say clearly, because it matters, I did not suddenly become strong that day. I did not discover hidden muscles or a warrior's instinct buried deep inside me. I stayed exactly the same person I had always been, a careful thinker, a planner, someone who solved problems with patience rather than force. The difference was that, for the first time, that kind of thinking was the only thing standing between our people and disaster. I gathered the few soldiers we had left and asked them, calmly, to tell me everything about the outpost defenses. So, not just the weapons, but the maintenance systems, the power grids, the environmental controls, All the boring, unglamorous machinery that nobody thinks about until they desperately need it. We had maintenance drones, small machines built to repair walls and fix wiring, nothing designed for battle. But with a little reprogramming, and a great deal of luck, we adjusted their tools to work in ways they were never meant to. We sent them toward the raiders' approach path, not to attack directly, but to slow them down, to confuse their formation, to buy us precious minutes. We also had coolant systems built to protect the colony from Meridian's harsh storms. I ordered them released early, filling the main approach with thick, blinding mist, just as the raiders' front line arrived. It was not a weapon. It was simply confusion, the kind that gives frightened defenders a fighting chance against a stronger force. I remember standing in the command room, watching status lights blink red and yellow across old screens, feeling my hands shake as I gave orders I was never trained to give. I was scared. I want to be honest about that. I was not brave in the way stories usually describe bravery. I was terrified, and I kept working anyway, because stopping felt more frightening than continuing. The fighting outside grew louder. I could hear it through the thick walls, distant thuds and shouts carried on the wind. Wounded soldiers were brought into the shelter beneath the command building, and I found myself moving between screens and cots, giving instructions one moment and comforting frightened colonists the next. At some point, word came that the raiders had broken through our outer defenses. There was no one left to hold the final barrier but me and a small handful of exhausted defenders. I remember picking up a sidearm, a weapon I had only ever used during required training exercises, my fingers unfamiliar with its weight. I will not describe what happened next in great detail, because some moments are better remembered in feeling than in exact events. I remember standing at the entrance to the shelter, between the wounded and the danger outside, because there was nowhere else for me to be. I remember a large raider commander stepping through the mist, and I remember standing my ground, not because I felt strong, but because retreating was simply not an option left to me. I do not remember every second clearly. Fear does strange things to memory. What I do remember is that when reinforcements finally arrived, called in by a distress signal I had sent hours earlier, they found the colony still standing. 41 colonists were alive, the wounded soldiers were still breathing, and the raiders, faced with a defense they had not expected, chose to retreat rather than continue their attack. I was sitting in the wreckage of the courtyard when Vex found me, nearly 2 hours later. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely hold a water container someone had given me. Smoke still drifted through the air, and the ground was scattered with debris from the battle, but the colony had held. She did not say anything at first. My wife, who always had strong opinions and clear words for every situation, simply stood there, looking at me, looking at the destruction around us, looking at the survivors slowly emerging from shelters, with relief written across their faces. "You held this," she finally said. It was not a question. It was something closer to disbelief. "I did not have your strength," I told her, my voice unsteady. "I did not have claws, or the muscles your people are so proud of. I only had what I know, so I used that instead." She knelt down in front of me then, something I had never seen her do for anyone. She took my hands in hers, gently, as if seeing them for the first time. "I have watched trained warriors break under far less than what you face today," she said quietly. "I called you weak because I did not understand what I was looking at. I am sorry, Adam. I judged you by a measure that was never meant for you. I did not have a clever response ready. I simply began to cry, from exhaustion, from fear finally leaving my body, from 3 years of quiet hurt finally being seen and understood." In the days that followed, word of what happened at Meridian spread across the Ascendancy. Some called it luck. Others called it clever thinking under pressure. My wife's people have an old phrase for it, one that does not translate perfectly into my language, but comes close to meaning strength, that hides quietly, until the moment it is truly needed, and then changes everything around it. Vex still teases me sometimes about my grip, or my inability to lift the heaviest crates without help. Old habits, she says, are hard to break. But she no longer calls me fragile, and she no longer measures my worth by the size of my hands. When new arrivals from her homeworld visit our colony, some of them still look at me the way she once did, with quiet doubt in their eyes. When that happens, she has taken to saying something I never expected to hear from her. "Watch him closely," she tells them, with quiet pride in her voice. "He does not carry stone across his shoulders. He carries the rest of us, when it matters most." I do not think I will ever be strong, in the way her people understand strength. I do not think I need to be. What I learned that day on Meridian is that there is more than one kind of strength worth having, and sometimes the quiet kind, the patient kind, the kind built from careful thinking rather than raw power, is exactly what is needed when everything else has failed. Life on Meridian slowly returned to its normal rhythm after that day. The colony was repaired, the defenses strengthened, and new soldiers were sent to make sure such an attack could not happen again so easily. But something between Vex and I had changed, quietly and permanently, in a way that no repair crew could measure or fix. She began asking me questions about my work, real questions, not polite ones asked out of duty. She wanted to understand how I thought through problems, how I saw patterns others missed, how patience and planning could sometimes accomplish what raw strength alone could not. I found myself, for the first time in our marriage, truly explaining myself to her, and finding that she was genuinely listening. In turn, I began to understand her better as well. Her people's respect for strength was not simply pride or arrogance, as I had once assumed. It came from a difficult history, a world where physical power had often meant the difference between survival and loss. She had grown up believing that softness led to danger, that gentleness was something to be protected, rather than trusted with responsibility. Meridian had shown her that gentleness, paired with a clear mind, could hold a line just as well as any warrior's blade. We were not the same couple we had been before the attack. We were, I think, a better one. Not because I had proven myself worthy in some dramatic, unforgettable battle, but because we had both learned to see each other more clearly, without the old assumptions getting in the way. Sometimes, late at night, Vex will still ask me to tell her about that day, even though she already knows every detail. I think she likes hearing it in my own words, hearing the fear in my voice as I describe it, understanding fully what it cost me to stand my ground that day. I always end the story the same way. I tell her that I am not a warrior, and I never will be. I tell her that my hands are still soft, my grip still weak compared to hers, and that this has not changed and probably never will. And every time, she smiles, takes my soft, ordinary hands in hers, and tells me that she would not trade them for the strongest hands in the galaxy. That, I have come to understand, is its own kind of victory, not the kind found on a battlefield, but the kind found afterward, in quiet moments, when two people finally see each other as they truly are.